A wedding that was the strangest in the village. The groom carried a pig. At the crucial moment, it suddenly broke free and ran off down a dusty road. The couple, both clumsy and comical, panicked and chased after it. When the animal was caught, the young man knelt down, the ring flashed, and the girl laughed through her tears. Her nod sealed their bond, belated but full of happiness. Their small house was filled with laughter and the joyful anticipation of a child soon to be born. But then, a storm arrived. A convoy of luxury cars stopped in front of the farm. People from a construction company presented a demolition contract, threatening that the 3-generation pig farm would be an embarrassment to the country during the live broadcast of the Olympics. They ordered him to sign. The man firmly refused, as this place was the lifeblood of his family. The refusal turned into a scuffle, with the sounds of clubs echoing loudly. The company director stepped out, looking calm, lit a foreign cigarette, and then suddenly hit the gentle farmer. It was not just a blow, but a cold warning. Night fell, and as the couple slept soundly, a fire broke out. The entire village cried out, running to put out the flames. The farm became a red sea, with pigs crying out tragically. The man fell to his knees, watching his entire livelihood burn to ashes. In the ruins, his wife discovered a foreign cigarette butt, the same kind the director had used. They were certain he was the one behind it. A trial was opened. The couple brought the cigarette butt as evidence, their voices trembling as they accused him. But the witnesses began to change their testimony, falsely claiming that they saw nothing that night but a blurred shadow like a pig. One by one, they turned their backs, showing clear signs of being bribed. Justice collapsed. The wife looked at her husband with an expression of despair. The husband refused to give up. He went to prosecutor Tae-soo, bringing a recording of the director threatening the witnesses. "This is enough to reopen the case," the prosecutor reassured him. But immediately after, he was ambushed. Figures appeared in the night, tied him up, beat him, and then staged a hanging. Shocking news spread. The wife collapsed before her husband's body, screaming in agony. Everyone said he committed suicide, but she knew it was a conspiracy. She knocked on the doors of every agency, tearfully begging for help. But all she received were cold rejections. In her grief, she placed her hand on her belly. A life was waiting to be born. She wiped away her tears, looked at her husband's portrait, and swore, even if the whole world turns its back, "I will raise our child to be a person, and I will live for both of us." The fire of hatred and the fire of a mother's love began to burn fiercely within a woman who seemed so fragile. The wife, named Jin-sun, left the old village while pregnant, carrying her promise to live for her husband. She found a new farm and continued the work of raising pigs, a seemingly ordinary job that was her last link to her deceased husband. The new villagers quickly came, holding their noses and complaining about the foul smell. The exchange of words turned into an argument, even to the point of pulling each other's hair in the middle of the yard. With her belly tight, Jin-sun suddenly felt intense pain. The shouting turned into chaos, and then a hush fell in anticipation. A red-faced baby boy cried his first cry. She named him Kang-ho, just as her husband had wished. At the same time, another woman in the village gave birth to a baby girl, Mi-ju. The 2 children were born at the same hour, with the same cries, as if destiny had tied their fates together. Time passed, and Kang-ho and Mi-ju grew up together. The boy was often ridiculed by his friends for the smell of pig manure. But whenever that happened, Mi-ju, the strong girl, would stand up for him. They gradually became inseparable friends. But Jin-sun didn't want her son to be just a country boy. She was strict, even cruel, forcing Kang-ho to study day and night. At the dinner table, he was never allowed to eat his fill, because his mother was afraid he would get sleepy and it would affect his studies. "You have to become a prosecutor," she repeated like a curse. Only then, she believed, would he be strong enough to fight the injustice their family had suffered. When they reached their youth, The innocent friendship between Kang Ho and Mi Ju blossomed into a young love. They exchanged shy glances and whispered promises. But on the day of the crucial university entrance exam, destiny tested them once more. Mi Ju was in a motorcycle accident and lay unconscious by the road. Kang Ho was at a crossroads, the exam that would determine his future or the fated girl who needed him. He rushed to her side, carrying Mi Ju to the hospital. He missed the exam. When he returned, Jin Sun went me. She yelled at him, pouring all her anger onto her son. You threw away your future for a girl, for the first time. Kang Ho talked back to his mother, his voice trembling but determined. Their mother-son bond fractured, and their love was forbidden. From then on, she strictly forbade the two of them from seeing each other. But fate could not keep those born together apart. In a corner of the city, Kang Ho and Mi Ju unexpectedly met again. This time, they were no longer just friends. They lived together like a young couple. She worked tirelessly to support and care for him, while he plunged into his studies. But life was never easy. One evening, Kang Ho coldly broke up with her. There was no clear reason, just an icy look. Mi Ju was stunned, her heart shattered. She did not know that from that moment on, Kang Ho's path would turn to darkness, entering a world of power, deceit, and revenge. Kang Ho sought out Chairman Song, the man who had destroyed his family years ago. With his talent and cold demeanor, he quickly won the old man's favor, so much so that the chairman himself offered to adopt him. The hatred in Kang Ho's heart blazed, but on his face, he wore a grateful smile. He agreed, accepting to live under the same roof as his enemy, waiting for the day he could overthrow him from within. But the path of revenge was not simple. Kang Ho also approached Congressman Tae-soo, an accomplice in the old case. He flirted with his daughter, became her boyfriend, and used their false love to open the door to power. He also held evidence that the congressman had a mistress and an illegitimate child, a weapon that could destroy his entire political career. One night, the congressman gave him an order. If you want to have a place here, get rid of this mistress and her child. Kang Ho silently nodded. In the darkness, he took them to a river and pushed their wheelchair into the water. A camera recorded the scene as proof that the task was completed. But in truth, it was just an act. He had prepared fake passports and money, helping the mother and child escape abroad. The video was a trick, a move in his game of revenge. Just when he thought everything was under control, fate dealt him a devastating blow. On his way back to his hometown, Kang Ho was in a car with the congressman's daughter. A bottle of water had been drugged. He grew tired and slowly passed out. At that very moment, a truck rushed toward them. There was a shocking crash, and the car overturned into the river. Blood, smoke, and screams filled the air. News of the accident spread. Jin Sun screamed outside the emergency room, hitting the glass and begging the doctors to save her son. After the surgery, Kang Ho's life was saved, but he had completely lost his memory. His body was still there, but his mind had regressed to childhood. He woke up, his eyes bewildered like a 7-year-old boy. The mother who was once so strict and cruel now held her son as she did when he was a child. Jin Sun taught him how to hold a spoon, how to walk, and how to speak simple words. The man who was once cold and a notorious prosecutor was now just an innocent boy in an adult's body. Those who once feared him now only felt pity. But in his mother's eyes, there was no disappointment, only determination. Once again, she would raise her son from the very beginning. No matter how cruel fate was, she would not let him fall. And in another corner, those who thought they had eliminated him had no idea that the fire in Kang Ho had never gone out. It was just dormant, waiting for the day it would erupt and consume everything. In the days after the accident, the small house was bustling again. but with the distorted sound of fate. Kang Ho, the sharp prosecutor he once was, now chattered like a little boy. He played with Mi Ju's 2 twin children, calling them friends, and would tumble around in the yard with them during their mischievous games. When his mother punished him, he would lower his head and mumble like a 7-year-old child. But in Kang Ho's old room, a secret lay dormant. Behind a family portrait, Jin-sun found a memory card and a stack of documents. She opened them and was shocked to realize that her son was not as apathetic as she had thought. All his coldness and distance were just preparation for his plan of revenge. Kang Ho had recorded every step, every piece of evidence, and every name. Her heart tightened. Her son had gone too far, turning into a corrupt prosecutor, willing to get dirty to gain an opportunity to approach his enemies. Meanwhile, Jin-sun's body began to betray her. The dull, persistent stomach pains lingered. At the hospital, the scan results were like a fatal stab, late-stage stomach cancer. Her world came crashing down, not because of the death that was waiting, but because she didn't know who would take care of Kang Ho when she was gone. That night, she quietly arranged everything, from savings books and house deeds to how to care for the pigs, plant sweet potatoes, and cook. Everything was meticulously written down like a guide for a 35-year-old man with the mind of a 7-year-old. If I'm no longer here, you have to know how to take care of yourself, she whispered to her husband's portrait, her tears mixing with the incense smoke. As the days passed, her health weakened, and she sought death as a release. With a bottle of insecticide in her hand, she quietly walked to her husband's grave, intending to end it all. But the innocent Kang Ho followed her, laughing cheerfully. "When you're done drinking, come home for dinner." "Okay, I'm hungry. We still have to feed the pigs." "Too." His innocent words were like a knife stabbing straight into Jin-sun's heart. She gripped the bottle and then tremblingly put it down. Maiju arrived in time to snatch the bottle from her hand. She scolded her, but her eyes were full of worry. Jin-sun was embarrassed and tried to pretend nothing had happened. But everyone understood that the shadow of death was closing in, and there wasn't much time left. In that moment, between life and death, between hope and despair, one thing became clear: a mother's love was the only thread holding everything together. And that was also the reason why fate had not let go of this mother yet. On a rainy night, the house was plunged into gloom. Jin-sun sat in front of her husband's altar, her eyes empty. She had prepared everything: documents, savings books, and notes to her son, as if writing to a child. Jin-sun placed a chair under the beam and put a rope around her neck. Tears streamed down her face as she softly called her son's name, like a final farewell. Just then, from outside the door, a faint voice called out, "Mom." The door burst open, and Kang Ho rushed in, his eyes frantic. He saw his mother struggling in the fatal rope. In that moment of despair, a miracle happened. Kang Ho braced himself with his hands, his legs trembling. And then, he stood up. For the first time since the accident, he got up from his wheelchair, hugged his mother tightly, and pulled her away from the scythe of death. Outside, Mi Ju saw Kang Ho, blood trickling down his forehead, his body dirty. He sobbed like a child, saying that his mother had abandoned him. Mi Ju silently hugged him, wiped his wounds, and whispered, "That's not it. Your mom must have her reasons. One day, you'll understand." Tears mixed with the rain, and pain mixed with her gentle embrace. Meanwhile, Jin-sun was struggling, her heart shattered. She apologized to her son, apologized for being weak, for wanting to disappear. But then, a glimmer of hope appeared. If he could stand up once, he could do it again. From that day on, she changed how she raised him. She no longer spoon-fed him or coddled him like a child. She pushed him out into the world, making him eat, walk, and struggle on his own. She even pulled him to the river and pushed him into the cold water, ignoring his cries for help, forcing him to stand up if he wanted to live. The mother once called cruel now became a strict trainer. She yelled by the riverside, "If you want to live, save yourself. I can't do it for you forever." Her eyes were filled with tears, but they also shone with a fierce belief. Day after day, Kang Ho practiced moving his legs, learning to walk unsteadily with wooden crutches. Each step tore at Jinson's heart, a mix of pain and happiness. She remembered when he was a baby, taking his first steps. Now, that scene was repeating itself. But instead of a 1-year-old child, it was a man torn apart by life, learning to stand strong once more. The whole village was moved. They pooled their money to buy Kang Ho a new electric wheelchair and held a small party to encourage him. Everyone clapped and cheered as they saw him step out into the yard, his legs shaky but firm. And Jin-sun, standing behind everyone, shed silent tears. She knew she had pulled her son back from the abyss, but she also knew that a storm was still waiting ahead. In the days after that shock, Jin-sun grew even more worried. Every night, when Kang Ho was fast asleep, she would quietly clean his room, hoping to find a clue to the past he no longer remembered. And then, in an old drawer, under a layer of dusty documents, she found a small memory card. Her heart pounded. She plugged it into the computer. Before her eyes appeared videos and diary entries that Kang Ho had recorded. The image of her son in a suit, with sharp eyes and a voice full of hatred. "I will never forgive them. I will destroy them, one by one." Each file was a piece of his revenge plan. Evidence of Chairman Song accepting bribes, a recording of the director threatening witnesses, documents about Congressman Tae-soo and his hidden illegitimate child. There were even recordings of Kang Ho meeting with underground gangs, making deals for information. Her son had plunged deep into the mud, becoming a cold-hearted person she didn't even recognize. Tears poured down her face, a mix of sorrow and regret. She remembered the years she forced him to study like a machine, never giving him a full meal or a peaceful night's sleep. She was the one who had turned him into a heartless person, so he would live with hatred. "It's all my fault," she sobbed, hugging the screen as if she could hold on to his lost childhood. Just then, a sharp stomach pain hit her, more intense than ever before. She collapsed onto the floor, drenched in sweat. After Mi-ju helped her to the hospital, the doctor just shook his head. The cancer had metastasized, and there wasn't much time left. Jin-sun sat silently in the waiting room, her eyes blurred. She was no longer worried about herself, but only afraid of who would protect Kang Ho when she was gone. But fate would not allow peace. One evening, the village was in chaos from the smell of smoke. A fire suddenly broke out in the straw shed. In just a moment, the entire farm was ablaze like hell. The villagers panicked, yelling and carrying water buckets. But the strong wind made the fire spread quickly. In the chaos, Kang Ho stumbled inside, ignoring his mother's screams to stop. He saw Mi-ju and the 2 children trapped. His body was trembling, his mind was hazy, but his heart urged him to rush forward. The red flames reflected in his eyes, and the buried memories began to surface. The sound of his father screaming during the fire years ago, the smell of the foreign cigarette lingering in the ashes, the cold face of the company director, the sinister smile of Chairman Song, the indifferent eyes of Congressman Tae-soo. The entire past came rushing back like a tidal wave. The very next day, Kang Ho began to act. He went to Mi-ju and told her everything. Mi-ju trembled as she heard about the conspiracy and the crimes her own father had witnessed but dared not speak of. She was stunned, but in the end, she held his hand tightly. "If you want to fight, I'll be with you." A faint smile appeared, and the 2 of them entered the life-or-death game together. Their first ally was San-sit, a loyal friend who was willing to do anything, no matter how dangerous. He helped Kang Ho find the old files and trace the dirty money. The group met in secret at night, spreading out maps and marking each name and location. Each red line was like a drawing of his father's blood from years ago. Meanwhile, Chairman Song and Congressman Tae-soo still sat on their throne of power. arrogant like gods. They believed that the man who had lost his memory was now just a failure. But they had no idea that the failure was picking up the pieces of the truth one by one, preparing to expose everything. Night fell, and in the small room with a flickering light, Kang Ho and his allies were busy preparing. On the table, documents were piled up like a mountain black books, audio recordings, and photos of transactions. Each piece of evidence was a bullet aimed directly at those who had destroyed his family. Mi-ju sat quietly next to him, meticulously writing down each plan. Her eyes shone with determination, unlike the innocent girl she once was. Now, she was his comrade, the one who would go to the very end with him. Whenever Kang Ho was exhausted, she would gently place her hand on his shoulder and whisper, "You can only win if you are alive." Meanwhile, Chairman Song and Congressman Tae-soo began to sense danger. They sent their henchmen to follow them, and even released false information to probe them. When the news leaked, the public started to get stirred up. The press quietly published stories about the corruption charges, but were quickly silenced. Witnesses suddenly disappeared or committed suicide in a mysterious way. Darkness was closing in, but Kang Ho did not retreat. The day of final judgment finally came. The courtroom was packed, with journalists pushing and cameras flashing everywhere. In the plaintiff's row, Kang Ho stood tall, his eyes burning. Facing him, Chairman Song and Congressman Tae-soo sat arrogantly, their faces deceptively calm, but hidden underneath was the fear of being exposed. The prosecutor read the indictment, his voice echoing corruption, bribery, murder, destruction of evidence. The courtroom buzzed. The opposing lawyer immediately countered, claiming it was all the fabrication of a man who had lost his memory. But at that moment, Kang Ho slowly stood up and placed a black book on the judge's desk. The first page opened, revealing signatures, numbers, and images of transactions. Each page turned was a knife slicing straight into the careers of the evil men. The audience was loud, and the journalists' cameras flashed nonstop. Chairman Song's face went pale, and Congressman Tae-soo broke into a sweat. That wasn't all. Kang Ho then presented an audio recording, the very one that threatened the witness years ago. The sound rasped through the speakers, the cold voice of the company director echoing, "If you open your mouth, you'll die." The entire courtroom went silent. Some people cried, remembering the injustices they had witnessed. A new witness entered, a man named Tae-soo, one of the people who had escaped persecution thanks to Kang Ho. He bowed to the court and recounted the whole truth. His testimony was like a hammer blow, shattering all their defenses. The opposing lawyer was silenced, with nowhere left to turn. In the chaos, Chairman Song screamed, "It's all a fabrication. This kid just wants personal revenge." But at that moment, Kang Ho raised his hand, his voice calm. "Yes, I want revenge. But most of all, I want justice for my father, for my mother, and for all the people you trampled on." His words resonated, like a knife tearing off their masks. As for Tae-soo, he initially tried to deny it, but was then exposed he was the one behind the murder of the secretary and her child, and had also forced his own daughter to harm Kang Ho. His daughter burst into tears, revealing that her father had deceived her, and Ha-yeon stood up to confirm Tae-soo was the one who killed Kang Ho's father and orchestrated everything. Tae-soo tried to use his daughter's mental health record to cover up the truth and staged a crying scene in court. But then the final witness the baby Hyo had hidden appeared, and a day test revealed everything. At this point, he had no way to deny it, and was arrested at the court along with Chairman Song. Congressman Tae-soo lowered his head, knowing his career and honor had collapsed. Finally, the verdict was announced. Chairman Song was sentenced to life in prison. Congressman Tae-soo was stripped of his position and prosecuted for multiple crimes. The courtroom after the trial. When justice was served, Jin-san passed away from her late-stage cancer. The scene of her passing was very touching before she died. She left a message for her son, telling him to live a happy life and not repeat the cycle of hatred. Her death was the emotional climax. Causing Kang Ho to break down and truly mature, he understood that the revenge had ended, and now all that remained was the responsibility to live a decent life and protect his family. The film concludes with the image of Kang Ho, Mi-ju, and their 2 children continuing to live at the farm, but always carrying the memory of his mother, the bad mother who raised him with both love and strictness. The film ends with the image of the family gathered around a simple meal. No wine, no delicacies, just vegetable soup, pork, and the sound of laughter. In that moment, all the pain seemed to be carried away by the wind, love, justice, and forgiveness that was the final victory.